Before we get to this specific day, I would like to mention that some of these people are still out there. So for safety purposes, all names will be replaced. I will also not tell where I live, but it's somewhere in Europe. So first, a little background story. I was 22 at the time. Me and my boyfriend had been clean for about 6 months. The life we had lived before was filled with hard drugs every day. And in a small town like ours, the circle of those kind of people is small, and everyone knows what everyone's sitting on and are up to. It's just one large group of people, and it's like they're nesting together. And because of their constant proximity matched with the drugs, they eventually become so paranoid that they lose anything resembling trust towards one another. It becomes a never-ending season of weeding out each other, and people continuously disappear, found beaten to the brink of death, or simply gotten rid of. Anyway, it was Easter, and we had spent the last half year in my in-laws' house out in the woods. So this weekend, we just had this strong urge to party a bit in the city. We called one of our old friends that we deemed trustworthy to ask if he could hook us up. His name was Vince. He sounded happy to help, as usual, and said he was sitting on some E, speed, and ethyl. He seemed eager to help us out and invited us to come over and hang out. So we did. When we got there, there was just Vince and a girl that we only knew from a distance, Jane. Jane was known to be batshit crazy, and all the previous bump-ins I've had with her has left me with very, very bad vibes, knowing that she's been involved one way or another in the previous murders or disappearances taking place in the same circle of people. That is why I was happy to see she was passed out on the sofa. Vince was happy to see us. After all, it had been a while. My boyfriend exchanged money for 4 pills of E, and to our delighted surprise, he gave us 4 more for free. So, me and my boyfriend took 4 each, and while we waited for it to hit, Vince lit up a huge bowl of his homemade spice. For those who don't know what spice is, I believe it to be a European thing. It started off as synthetic weed, but developed over the years, and its effects and side effects can be compared to heroin. Vince made his own, and he made it strong. My boyfriend declined the offer, but I accepted after Vince himself had a hit. It instantly punched me in the brains, and it wasn't pleasant. It was like taking a hit of a nightmarish roller coaster. I felt sick and very disoriented, and all I could manage to utter was a mumbled, "I need to lie down." I made it to the sofa and collapsed, and all I could do was to focus on not falling off the edge of the earth. I don't know how long I stayed like that, but when I finally could open my eyes, I quickly wished I hadn't. Jane was sitting on the edge of the sofa right beside me and just stared at me, crazy eyes, absent any concern. She started moving her head back and forth like a snake, and I'm sure she purposefully tried to freak me out. "Are you okay?" she asked in a slow voice and the weirdest look on her face, looking as if hoping my answer would be no. I nodded and gathered all the strength I had left to make it to the bathroom, where I threw up. When I was done, feeling better, I went to the kitchen where Vince stated scoldingly, "Now you threw up the E," then asked if I wanted more. I declined, knowing by the familiar buzz that not all of the E had gone to waste. It was rather unusual for him to be concerned with my high, but at the time I didn't think anything of it. Vince instead insisted that I take a line of ethyl, so I did. The 4 of us then decided to go outside and walk to a tiny peninsula connected with the city. People have always gone there, so not to be bothered by the cops or other. And it's a beautiful place. We sat there for a while, chilling and enjoying ourselves with what was invading our bloodstreams. This is where things take a turn. I was gradually becoming more and more fucked up, and was kind of busy enjoying my buzz. While I was completely out of it, my boyfriend, who wasn't as far gone as I, felt things turning shady and grew more and more suspicious of Vince and Jane and their true intentions. He'd known Vince for many years and could tell something was up. Suddenly, Vince gave his phone to my boyfriend, saying it's Ned. Both me and my boyfriend froze, exchanging glances. Now, Ned used to be very close to my boyfriend, going back at least 8 years. But 6 months back from this time, they had a falling out over who owed what, and my boyfriend had been rather vocal about his anger towards Ned, and he wasn't afraid to express his dislike for the guy to the people in the circle, making it clear that he wanted nothing to do with him, not realizing that the people had rallied to Ned's side, because he was, at the time, the one who was sitting on the most drugs in town. After a few seconds of tension, my boyfriend took the phone. Hey man, what's up? His jaw was clenched. Yeah, I'm with Vince and Jane. Where are you? It was a short conversation, and I remember it to be a very strange one. My boyfriend sounded normal, while I could see he was anything but happy or relaxed. Ned is coming here, he said and looked at me, and even through my haze I could see something was wrong. Let's leave, I insisted. And as we got ready to get the fuck out of there, a car pulled up to Vince, and he looked over to us. Meet up at my place? We agreed and started walking the short journey back to the city. Jane, who had come with us, said she needed to get to an ATM to take out some cash. We found one, and Jane suddenly turned to my boyfriend. You do it, she urged and handed him her card. Puzzled, he entered the given code and took out the amount of cash she'd asked for, giving it to her and the receipt. Jane took a moment to examine the receipt, suspicion growing on her face. This isn't right, she said and glared accusingly at my boyfriend. We both gave her a look that said, What the fuck are you trying to pull? I mean, the receipt and cash were there, in her hand. Eventually, she gave up her try to pin theft on my boyfriend, and we all agreed to go back to Vince's apartment. In hindsight, I believe it was an attempt to add purpose to a crime that was about to take place. When we got there, the place was full of people, sitting on the sofas and the bed. They were older, all of them junkies or ex-convicts, and they were all acting very strange. They were silent, and threw constant glances between each other, purposefully avoiding to look at my boyfriend. Yet at the same time, it was very apparent he was the target in the room. The entire atmosphere in the apartment had gone from seemingly friendly to hostile as fuck. My boyfriend, already tense and wary, overheard Vince muttering to one of the shady-looking guys that Ace and his people were coming. Now, Ace was basically a Nazi, and had before tried to lure my boyfriend to remote places to take beatings, or possibly to be taken care of, for the reasons of my boyfriend having expressed his liberal and anti-racist opinions in front of him. It should also be mentioned that at this point, Ace was also very close to Ned. My boyfriend instantly went up to me and urged that we should get the fuck out of there. We both looked over to Vince, who was now sitting, whispering with Jane. That is when we noticed Jane having a knife in her hand, which she tried to pass over to Vince, but he firmly shook his head and gestured by twice hitting a clenched fist into his palm, and his eyes met with my boyfriend's. My boyfriend grabbed me and pulled me out of the apartment, and we flew down the stairs. When we were hurrying back home, my boyfriend updated me on the signs I'd obviously not noticed, being as fucked up as I was. I could hardly speak or think straight. In hindsight, I suspect that was a part of their plan. He had been suspecting something was up since we left Vincent's apartment the first time. I had only started to actually get the situation when we went up there the second time. I went into full panic. We hurried through the town to get home, paranoid and in shock. Had we stayed minutes longer, I'm certain they would have killed us. These people aren't the type to stop a beating when it's enough. I'm writing this 2 years later, and I've since moved away to start a new life. But I wasn't surprised when I was told that 6 months ago, Vince was found dead and robbed. Many people think, including me, that Ace was behind it. Ned and Jane are now a couple. I don't want to begin to think what kind of awful things that they are doing to other people, now as a team. If any of you doubt that some really bad things could have happened that day, let me inform you that Ace, just days ago, was convicted for arson and first-degree murder. His ex-girlfriend had just 1 day prior to the deed broken up with him. And so, he brought 20 liters of gasoline and emptied it all in her apartment and put it on fire, locking her in to die in the flames. For me, it was a big shock to discover that Vince would betray us that severely. He'd been a really good friend, and he was a decent guy. I realize I sound naive, but when you're living that kind of life, those kind of people are the only ones who understand and, frankly, want anything to do with you. I still have big issues with trusting people, and often misread people for wanting to hurt me in some way. As I said, I've moved away from the town, and am now living a clean life. But I still have dark thoughts. For example, I sincerely and wholeheartedly hope that Ace, while in prison, can figure out how to use a sheet in more than one way. And until he does, may he drop his soap many times over. So, if or when he gets out, me and many other people will be waiting. Hey everybody, I'm Bella Deadwood. Thank you for watching this video. It was probably one of the most frustrating videos to edit, but I hope it turned out well, and if I missed something, I will fix it later. Anyway, while getting into drugs may be easy, getting out is really hard, so I have a lot of respect for anyone that can get out of that lifestyle. If you have any ideas for future videos, please leave them in the comments below. And as always, I'll leave you to your nightmares. Goodbye, guys.